Hey, it's Fantasy Sports Publications, footballdiehards.com. Another video in preseason. This one's going to be about offensive lines. The exciting thing, a lot of people care about them. We care about them. There's only a few shopping days left this year. It's Friday, the 31st of August. There's some people even draft into next weekend, some of those high stakers that go to Vegas. I'm here with Adam Hall. Adam, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
We're going to have fun. I loved your article on the O-line. I thought we'd have a little time to chat about it, get it up on the site so people can actually hear what you talk about it, about the various things. We're going to look at the top 10 that you have and the bottom 10, and of course you've got a lot of those stuff on the article. That's at footballdiehards.com, so go ahead and take a look at it. So let me flip over to that chart, if I can do that. Oh, there it is. And you got the best offensive lines and the worst the top 10 of each. So where would you like to start?
Well, I mean, we can just start off right at the top, at the very best. I mean, and one of the big things that I recognize this year is that the Philadelphia Eagles are, you would think that after a Super Bowl win, that they'd be in a position for regression. But from everything that I've run into from my model that's based on grades, on production, and on a unique weighting algorithm that I've developed over the last couple of years, is that the Eagles are still primed to be a phenomenal fantasy team and just a really good team in general. I mean, taking a look at people like Jay Ajayi could be really great, but for me personally, where I feel most comfortable drafting from the Philadelphia Eagles currently is in their passing game. I feel like there's a little bit more articulation and actual pointed ability to know who's going to be able to produce there. It's going to be your Alshon Jeffries, who's just been taken off PUP. It's going to be Carson Wentz. It's going to be Zach Ertz. And,
another thing to think about, Jeffrey's going to miss 2 to 3 games maybe. And so there could be some sneaky guys. Obviously, Zach could really produce. But guys like Aguilar, he could be sneaky there at least the first half of the season, because if Jeffrey is out and or kind of coming back, it could be a guy, a hidden guy.
He absolutely could be, and he can be picked up after the 10th or 12th round, even 12-man in 12-man PPR leagues. And so something to really focus on there. He had his breakout last year, and he's in a position to continue to thrive. He seems healthy, and especially if Alshon's not at 100%, they're going to need somebody to focus on the outside, because Ertz has a tendency to work in the slot and in the seam so often. So Nelson Aguilar could be a steal. I picked him up a couple times.
Yeah, I mean, they've come out now and say Alshon Jeffrey, he's going to miss 2 or 3 games. And when they're saying that, the worry is then he comes back, and how long is it going to take him to get going? It may be 4, 5, 6 games. And so it may be somebody else you want to focus on. Now, right now, Ertz, his value, you're not getting Ertz cheap. You're going to have to pay for him. But I kind of feel there's a level at tight end anyway with Gronk, and then the mind is tired. Who's the number 2? Kelsey, and then Ertz. So that's a tough one. It's a tough guy to have to take. You're going to have to pay for him in drafts. But maybe a guy like you said, Aguilar, you can get very late in drafts. So
absolutely.
That's a great offensive line ranking, number 1 in both categories.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you really can't go wrong with a couple All-Pros. That's one thing that we're going to see consistently throughout this article, is that my weighting algorithm, because it focuses so much on All-Pro potential, not just because of production, but also because of leadership, that having people like Jason Kelsey on that team is really going to help everybody else out. I mean, before the Travis Frederick injury, the model actually had the Cowboys as the number 2 overall offensive line in almost every category. But losing somebody who I had ranked in the 99th percentile and who actually got extra boost because of that as well, we're looking at a drop of, you can see the points here, we're looking at a drop of 30, 40, 50 points taking from Travis Frederick to Joe Looney. But that just really speaks to how good that Dallas offensive line is. Having Zach Martin back, who has been practicing at full speed, having Tyron Smith back, who's expected to play immediately, and dodging a really bad hit with La'el Collins, and then getting Connor Williams, who was an underrated left tackle coming out of the draft who they've moved to left guard. I mean, this offensive line in Dallas, it's frightening because we know that the bookies move the odds the second most when the center is injured. But yeah. Travis Frederick is a great piece, but Joe Looney is serviceable, and he'll come in, and there may be some growing pains, but this is not going to have me dropping Zeke Elliott down my draft list very much. He's still firmly placed at 3 or 4 for me. I like the fact that we've been hearing that he's going to be more involved in the passing game. I don't know where else they're going to go with the ball. I mean, we have a rookie in Michael Gallup. We have Cole Beasley, Alan Hearns, people who are conventionally thought of as slot receivers coming into play in the X and Y positions. And so Zeke Elliott is going to be forced to have that offense funneled through him. And so even with the loss of that anchor in Travis Frederick, I still think that Zeke Elliott has top 3, top 4 fantasy potential in the entire league this year, and the stats bear it out.
That's interesting. It's good to hear what you're saying because it is a concern. Sometimes as fantasy guys, we just get so excited and, Zeke was great as a rookie and it's fantastic, and you kind of you get emotional about your picks and you got to think logically. Now, Cole Beasley is an interesting guy because he's basically a last player taken, and what I mean by that is typical drafts, you can get him with your last player, and he just may be a really valuable guy if you can get him with that, 16th or 18th pick, depending on your league size and when you're taking your defenses and kickers. Because nobody's thinking about him. He was injured in preseason, but he's a guy who I think Dak is comfortable with, and he's your Welker guy, your Edelman type of a guy who could end up getting a lot of catches this year. So he could be a really good PPR player. Now you got Atlanta number 2. We could spend all night doing this, and I'm going to pick a way here. I don't mean to be going 1, 2, 3, but Matt Ryan did not look good in preseason, and he had an average to below average 2017 season. It looks to me to your chart that he could sneak in and be a really nice, valuable. You could get him as a middle quarterback too, and he may end up being really valuable this year, according to your best offensive lines.
Absolutely. I mean, they just picked up Calvin Ridley, who's been doing really well in the preseason, but also according to various statistical organizations throughout the internet who track every pass that quarterbacks throw, is that Matt Ryan was almost historically unlucky when it came to interceptions last year, when it came to dropped balls and all these different things. Not that he had such an enormous drop percentage, but when his players drop balls, they were often interceptions. And so we're expecting a lot of positive regression for Matt Ryan. This offensive line working here is great. We have Austin Hooper coming into his 3rd year, I believe. And for tight ends, that's really when things start kicking there. And so having Ridley, having Hooper, of course having Julio is going to limit Matt Ryan's floor immensely. And having this offensive line there with Sarkisian in his 2nd season, he really could be an enormous steal because he's going at the very tail end of the quarterback ones.
Yeah, sometimes preseason can tell you a lot. Sometimes preseason can give you a completely inaccurate perspective. And this could be one of those because they really did not look good in preseason. But again, the data that you have is more important than what we see in preseason sometimes. Jacksonville on the bottom there, they're 10th in their, they've got, I'm looking at Leonard Fournette. He's a top, he goes around 8th, 9th, 10th, plus or minus in most PPR drafts, a little higher in standard because he doesn't catch as many balls. Is that a low ranking for Jacksonville? Are we worried about Fournette? They said they want to run this year, but Jacksonville's offensive line I thought was a little better last year than a number 10 ranking, but tell me I'm wrong.
Well, I mean, they've absolutely have gotten better this year. I mean, after picking up probably the biggest offensive line free agent in the NFL this year in Norwell, I mean, they've taken an enormous step forward at that guard position, and most of the time you want to see that production really kick up a notch between the rookie and sophomore years. And if you actually take a look at grading and production, Cam Robinson was one of the worst left tackles in the NFL for the entire year. He definitely had an uptick in production near the end of the year, and I want to see that continue on. But the fact that they're here, that Linder, their tackle, their center, had the highest single game grade in PFF last year for offensive line, that's a great sign. I love the Jaguars this year. Not only do they have a top 10 offensive line, but they have the easiest passing schedule, according to my SOS project that you can also see on Football Diehards. And
that's
so
interesting.
People like Keelan Cole is quite possibly my sleeper of the year, because he came in, had to overcome so much as an undrafted free agent, saw 80 targets, had to beat out a bunch of people. Now the fact that Marquise Lee's not there to be able to work in competition with them, Alan Hearns is gone, and although DJ Chark and Moncrief ASJ, Chark's going to work as a deep threat, ASJ and Moncrief are going to work in the red zone, but they're not going to monopolize all of those opportunities. And so being the wide receiver one on this team could be an enormous value, especially considering you can get Keelan Cole very late in drafts.
Yeah,
I've been picking up Bortles.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, Cole, I was in a draft last night, and unfortunately I thought Cole was going to slip a little further, but, he's probably going 10+. With Lee out, people are popping him up, but again, it's about value. Jacksonville's supposed to run the ball, but if you can get a Keelan Cole in the 10th, 11th, 12th round, or whatever it is, depending on your league, he's got a lot of potential upside, and if he doesn't do well, you haven't spent a big number on him. Go ahead, I interrupted you.
Oh, no problem. I mean, I've been picking up Blake Bortles as my third quarterback in 2 QB and Superflex leagues, and I feel pretty confident in that. I mean, and if he's not extremely successful, then he's your third quarterback. But that's really where he's going, and that's a huge value. But people have been consistently underrating Leonard Fournette, in my opinion, because he's often going at the 1-2 turn. And so if you are the 11th, 12th pick, it's possible that you can get a turn like Devontae Adams and Leonard Fournette, and I think that would be a great turn, because he has the possibility, especially according to the numbers, to outperform people like Kareem Hunt. But Kareem Hunt is consistently going 5, 6, 7, 8 picks before him. And so I think the numbers bear out the fact that every one of these teams in this top chart here have top third offensive lines, which means they're going to consistently give opportunities to every player on that team. And Fournette is definitely a beneficiary of this offensive line.
And people, I know he's going in the first round typically, second half of the first round. I know that's really high, but again, I agree with you that people are kind of soured a little bit on him. I mean, he was a rookie last year. He kind of hit the rookie wall. He's coming in better shape. He's lost a little weight. The team says they want to run. I think he'll catch a few balls. I mean, I forget. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but he's a nice, sneaky player that you can get late in the first round, just like you said, and come around the second and get another player, whether it be a receiver or a running back. That's going to be interesting, but people kind of have lost, they've lost that shine, and that's when you, as a drafter, don't group think. Don't go, oh, everybody's not taking Fournette. Think about it, and think about the other players. Cook for Minnesota, he's coming back from major injury. Everybody's hot on him. Yeah, I'm hot on him too, but he's still coming back from major injury, and I recall some stat recently that you lose about 30% of your efficiency or your abilities coming back from a major injury like that. So, Fournette may be a really nice alternative to some of those picks late in the first round. So what about these worst teams? Go ahead.
Oh, sure. I mean, just one more really quick thing about the good teams is that one sneaky pick can because of continued injury potential, but it's a lot of upside here. Jerick McKinnon. So the 49ers have the 8th best rushing offensive line right now, 8th best overall. But as Kyle Shanahan has been an offensive coordinator or a head coach, every single year he has furnished an RB1. And so last year, Carlos Hyde was an RB1 in PPR formats, and I think he had 50-plus catches. And that's with somebody who doesn't pride himself on pass catching ability. Jerick McKinnon got his enormous contract. You got to follow that money to see the usage, because he's an explosive athlete, but also because he can catch the ball. Because of this injury, McKinnon has been dropping into the late third, early fourth I've seen. And if you can pick him up around that time frame, that's a high risk, extremely high reward proposition.
Yeah, and the nice thing about it is that injury definitely helped, because he was going in the middle of the second round, and you're really having to pay for that hopeful thing that is he really didn't look in Minnesota he looked fine, he looked good, but you still go, how could this guy all of a sudden go to another team and all of a sudden be a potential RB1, and you just laid that out for us. And the fact he got injured, maybe you get him in the middle to late third, even the fourth, and the value goes way up. That's a good point. Any more sneaky players coming from the best offensive line category?
I think Tariq Cohen and has been going in the 8th or 9th, and in PPR formats, he's going to get some carries, and he's going to be the primary pass-catching back. We know that Maggie has said that Jordan Howard's going to be out in third down conditions. Well, that may be the case to a certain extent, but statistically speaking, when it comes to drops, Jordan Howard's been the worst in the NFL over the last 2 seasons. And so I think it stretches credulity to a certain extent to think that he's going to eat up an enormous amount of Tariq Cohen's target share. So for somebody in the mid to late rounds, I think Tariq Cohen as your flex option or your RB3 could outproduce his draft position by 2, 3, 4 rounds. And the numbers bear that out because he has the easiest schedule. And when it comes to rushing, in just schedule overall, I think it's, and then they have the number 7 offensive line. So definitely. Credulity. You said credulity.
I got to bring a dictionary to these videos. I have no idea what that word is.
Just disbelief.
It's a good one. I like that word. Yeah, that's another one. That's another interesting one, that Cohen, and he can get him later, and there's a lot of potential. Fun guy to watch, too. God, he's enjoyable to watch. I really enjoyed him last year in his rookie season. Okay, worst offensive lines. What are you thinking there?
So this is an odd situation that I wanted to draw attention to immediately. Is if you take a look at the SOS article, the Vikings have a fantastic schedule. It's definitely top 3 in all 3 areas. And if anybody has an opportunity to do well this year, it's the Bears, it's the Jaguars, and it's the Vikings. But when you take a look at these at the offensive line, they've had 2 big injuries, like season-ending injuries, and then they lost their offensive line coach in a freak death. And I think that Sperano helped them overachieve last year. After losing their center, after losing a guard, they're in really rough shape because they haven't really been addressing the offensive line to the same extent as teams like the 49ers, for example. And it's very possible that having this great opportunity in front of them could be squandered to a certain extent if Kirk Cousins is constantly pressured. But it's one of those high risk, high reward propositions where taking a Dalvin Cook or a Stephon Diggs or an Adam Thielen, who seems to be injured now as well, does furnish enormous upside. But I'm going to tend away from that personally, just because last year the Denver Broncos had the best schedule and it wasn't even close, but their offensive line was so bad that it really undercut their entire team, even though they have very talented players like Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. So I'd beware of Minnesota. If you're feeling risky and you're feeling lucky, then the Vikings have a lot of upside, but their offensive line looks so bad that it could really undercut their production.
Well, Cook, he's been going in the very early second round, the middle of the second round, and what you're telling me right here is maybe that's one of the guys that I should stay away from here in the next 8 days of drafting capabilities here.
Yeah,
especially with his injury. He's got his injury issue from last year, and again, he's good, everything's good, modern technology, working out, but there's still a situation where he could have some regression this next year, just still getting back 100% from the injury, on top of the lots of offensive line concerns here.
Yeah, after seeing the injury and talking about his production decreasing, I love that stat that you mentioned earlier, it would pay for us to remember that he almost had combine numbers. And so his football IQ is immense, but you have to have a certain amount of explosiveness to perform at the NFL level. Not to say that I think he's going to be an unmitigated bust, but I think that there's a lot of risk here that we would be better served drafting somebody like a Leonard Fournette in his place. And I think that he has a much higher floor, and that's really something to focus on.
Interesting. What's another one here that you pops out in the worst offensive lines?
Well, somebody who is kind of a punching bag, and currently is Shady McCoy because of of the domestic violence problems. That was an unintended pun, my goodness. But not only is he approaching age 30 or he's already past it, he has a huge number of carries, but then they've lost Cordy Glenn, they've lost Richie Incognito. I mean, they've lost really important top-end parts of their offensive line. So the boost that they were going to be getting in the model from players who are substantially above average, they've lost that. So according to the model, it's adding insult to injury. So not only did you lose really good players, but you've lost the leadership and the strength of that offensive line. And so with a wildly inaccurate quarterback possibly and Josh Allen coming in there, it's difficult for me to think that Shady doesn't face a lot of stacked boxes or Marcus Murphy or whoever is there. I really worry about Buffalo's ability to be able to produce an RB1 here, especially if you're paying in for like a 5th round cost for McCoy. I don't think that that's even viable that far in.
Well, 5th round means he's more like an RB2 or an RB3, depending on how the draft goes. But he's definitely a risk. He's a ticking time bomb, but we all remember, even in bad situations, this guy can put some numbers up, but he's a stay-away guy. But there's always a point in the draft, where if it's the 6th round and your 7th round and you're going, wow, this guy could be an RB2 at least if those things that you just said don't really happen. But that's the problem, is you always have hope, and you got to be logical. But again, as he drops too far, he becomes a possible value pick. But yeah, things don't look good. I'm worried about the quarterback position there, the quarterback play affecting the running game and everything. It didn't look good in preseason, and they may be just sitting down going, okay, we're just going to go with it and get through this year and develop players, which may not help McCoy. Yeah.
I mean, and it's, we all have to make that choice at a certain point. If it's the 10th round and McCoy is there, I mean, are you really going to take Kelvin Benjamin over LaShawn McCoy? I don't think so. So, now, I mean, just use your noggin and it'll be okay.
Now, another one that's interesting in these worst offensive lines, is a team that I kind of like, is Carolina. I like Cam Newton. Mm-hmm. He's finished in the top 4 quarterbacks or 5 quarterbacks for several years, and everybody just doesn't like him for whatever reason. But he's always managed to finish quite high, except for in 1 year. And I like McCaffrey. I think the guy is, he's caught 80 balls as a rookie, but here we've got their offensive line in the bottom 10. What do you think?
I mean, once again, this is a piecemeal discussion. You can't take just one metric and say that it's going to destroy a team or not. That's why I'd still be willing to take digs at a certain point. But I actually love McCaffrey this year. I see McCaffrey as a high-end running back 1 this year. I seriously think he could finish top 5.
So you think you think McCaffrey is a steal in the early 2nd round or late late 1st round in typical PPR drafts?
I mean, I see McCaffrey going a lot in the middle 2nd, but if you can get him in any time in the 2nd round, I think that's a really high advantage, especially in PPR leagues, because he's going to get carries, and that's just going to be a boost. But if you watch McCaffrey's tape, the guy is a phenomenal route runner. He has fantastic hands. He was also the most targeted. I believe he was the most targeted running back in the NFL last year, and that was his rookie year. He's going to have more. He's going to have more chemistry with Cam. They've lost receiving options, which means that they're going to funnel the ball to him. Since Funchess isn't that pronounced of a route runner, DJ Moore is a rookie, and Greg Olson's coming back, yes, but Olson doesn't operate in the same part of the field that McCaffrey does. I think that it's very, very possible that this offense flows through McCaffrey, and McCaffrey ends up catching in excess of 80 balls this year. And if he does that, he's going to be a running back 1 again, which means that he's going to outstrip his draft position in the 2nd round. And if you take a look at the SOS, once again, the Panthers aren't in a horrible position. They have some good opportunities in front of them. And it's just a matter of them getting through the Saints. Like, if you can get past the Saints, if you can get past, like, the Falcons, one of those games a year, then you're going to be in a really good position. And I think that McCaffrey is a huge value. And I agree with you. People are underrating Cam again. He gets so much of his production from his rushing ability, and having somebody who's going to keep everything in a West Coast system, because I believe Turner's there now, right? And he's going to help Cam really utilize his rushing ability, but also use that huge arm. And when McCaffrey is feasting in the first 5 to 10 yards of the field, I think Cam has a possibility of really taking advantage of seam routes, taking advantage of deep routes, considering they got Curtis Samuel back, who runs a low 4.3. And so I see that this is one of the situations where, offensive line points to some problems, but I really do feel good about the Panthers this year.
Oh, good. I mean, I haven't gotten Christian McCaffrey much at all in my drafts, but I got a couple left, a big one on Sunday, and I'm kind of positioning myself in that draft. You have a process where you can pick where you want to be, and I ended up getting draft slot 10. So
nice.
I've got to think of I could either take McCaffrey at 10th, or I could take him with the 3rd pick in the 2nd round, or is that the 2nd pick in the 2nd round? I got a lot to think about in 2 more days. And that's a 3rd round reversal. My 3rd round is like the 2nd round, so I'll have the 2nd pick in the 3rd round also. So trying to plan out those 3 picks, and I really kind of want to try and get some shares of McCaffrey here. There was so much talk early on in the season, preseason and development, how he's not going to get the carries. That's crazy. Everybody, the group think was he's just not going to get the numbers. But I know he's small, but you're looking at a guy who had 80 catches as a rookie. It's just, there's a lot of upward potential here as a second year after he's developed himself physically and mentally, had those opportunities as a rookie, played 16 games or whatever, another preseason or another, off season to grow, or an off season to grow. I really didn't have one as a rookie, really. So that's exciting. Now, we're getting close to 30 minutes. We could talk all night. What else did I see here? Houston's line is not the greatest here, but do you think that's going to cause any issue for Watson or anybody?
Well, I mean, it's tough to say. There are a couple alternatives here. So Watson was the most pressured quarterback in the NFL. All of the Texans were last year.
Uh-huh.
And that ended up getting Deshaun Watson injured. Now, we know that Watson is so electric that he can kind of overcome a really bad offensive line, but he's also playing against the Titans twice a year, the Jaguars twice a year. They have a really difficult schedule overall, and it's going to make things a lot more difficult for Watson to be able to perform. And so I think that Watson as a high upside play could be pretty successful. But if he's taking a beating from Calais Campbell and from, Jabal Sheard and all these other guys in division on a really regular basis, once again, we have to think, how long does this man have until he gets injured again? And I don't want to see that happen, but I question, considering they didn't invest anything else in that offensive line in the offseason, what do they have to protect him? Is Lamar Miller a good enough running back to block for him? I'm not entirely certain that he is. And so considering that Watson is one of the first 3 quarterbacks off the board, it's difficult for me to think that he's going to be a really valuable pick. But we recognize at this point DeAndre Hopkins is pretty insulated from problems. He's getting this enormous target share, probably still a pretty solid value in the first round, but especially if Hopkins stays on his feet. But yeah, I mean, this is just a worrisome thing for me for the running backs, a worrisome thing for Watkins, especially at his ADP. And so the only person that I'm really going after hard in with the Texans is actually 2 people. So I'm going after Fuller and Hopkins, just because Fuller has become so cheap that it's hard for me not to want to try to go after him. But all of this stuff, just like Minnesota, it's like, okay, do you want to risk it? Because this offensive line is bad enough that's what you're doing. You're risking, but there's an enormous reward at the end of it if it pays off. That's why I'm a little bit hesitant on that.
And Watson, he's such a phenom. Those 7 games, he's got such upside. He's exciting to watch, and people were drafting him so high. I've seen him go 1 or 2, the first quarterback, second quarterback in a lot of leagues, best ball leagues. And it's like, wow, that's awful high when you can get a Cam Newton in the 8th round and pick somebody else in the 3rd or 4th round, a running back, a receiver, or a tight end. It's not as sexy, but it may be the smart play. And you're not saying you don't like Watson, but the price you're having to pay right now to get him is pretty high. And, dynasty leagues, yeah, I can understand that. Of course, it all depends on the format. But that's a fun one. I'm not sure what to do on that one. I've got Hopkins in a few leagues because I'll have the 8th, 9th, or 10th pick, and he falls to me in the first round, and I've taken him a couple times in the late first round.
Yeah, I feel like that he just has such an entrenched role in that offense that if you can get him at 10, 11, 12, that's an enormous value. And he's one of those game-breaking guys like Odell Beckham Jr., who's really going to produce no matter what the circumstances. So I don't have a problem taking Hopkins as early as 7 or 8.
Speaking of ODB, let's the Giants. What do you think? They had such problem last year with their offensive line and getting Eli Manning hit a lot and having to rush. Is that changed this year? What do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, they're in a better position. They got Nate Soldier from the Patriots, and he's really never missed any time. He's a stalwart on the left tackle position. He may not be top 5, but he's way more stable than Flowers. And then maybe Flowers will be better moving to right tackle. He's a physical freak, which is more conducive to success at the right tackle position. So, what do we have to do with the Giants? Well, we have Sickly there. That means that immediately they're going to, offenses aren't going to be able to sell out to stop the pass anymore. They're going to have to deal with him. And so I know that Barkley is more of an outside runner, but he can mix it up in the middle. And so this means a really balanced game script is coming. So Barkley can catch passes out of the backfield. Odell Beckham can catch passes anywhere, but then they have Evan Ingram in the seam. They have all sorts of different passing options in that offense. And so it's not like we see the Giants in the bottom 10 of pass or rush. I think they're like 13 or 15. So not phenomenal at all, but not like a travesty either. They're not going to tank it just on the offensive line. They may be better this year in that regard. And just having so many good offensive weapons around them, it really provides an opportunity for Odell Beckham to feast. And and people have kind of soured on him a little bit. I've seen his ADP dropping into the second round. I'm not sure if that's what you've been seeing, Emil, but
no, he's been going. He still goes in the late first round, but it's close. Well, Eli scares me. He looked so bad last year, and he just fell down sometimes when the rush came instead of looking for a short pass. I hope he can get that part of his game fixed, and if they can give him a little more time, because that's going to make a world of difference. And like you said, they're healthy. Hopefully they're healthier. They had such health problems last year. Now Barkley, he's going like the number 5 pick in the first round to the number 8 pick. You're expecting a lot from a rookie there. What do you think about that?
Well, we've seen a lot from rookies in the last couple of years. Running back is probably the most pro-ready position that comes into the NFL. And so, every year there are a few rookies that do really well. And Saquon Barkley has this unique skill set, similar to LT, to be able to thrive in this modern NFL. He could be an RB2 on probably caught passes alone. Now, am I feeling bullish enough about Saquon Barkley to draft him in the top 5? Probably not, to be honest. I think that there are more safe picks to be able to be had there. And, if I get an Antonio Brown at 1.05 or 1.06, and he ends up being a top 3 wide receiver, but Barkley ends up being a top 5 running back, that's fortunate I didn't take Barkley, but at the same time, I'm still getting immense value there. And it's just the opportunity costs of dealing with somebody who's an unknown. It seems a little bit more risky than I'm willing to take once again. But for people, say that Barkley drops to 8, 9, 10, which he usually won't. But if he does, I feel like just the inherent upside of that draft position, his pass catching ability, his overall freakish athleticism, he could be really, really good. But it's a little rich for my blood.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. The group think right now he's just still. I was in a draft recently, and he went number 5 or number 6, and I've avoided him, but mainly I've had picks lower down in the first round, so I avoided. I couldn't take him anyway in most of the drafts. But you try to find the guys. We all want everybody to do well. We're all excited, but sometimes you have to look at the risk. And I know Ezekiel Elliott was a top 3 running back in his rookie year, and yes, running backs can do that. And so it's not impossible. It's just Eli Manning concerns me. Maybe I'll be wrong, and hopefully I'm just worried about him. I'm worried enough that I'd rather take a Fournette or somebody in the lower first round if I can get there and feel a little more safer with that pick. Well, this has been fantastic. We're over 30 minutes, but we could go forever. Is there another line or a player or two you want to talk about in one of these situations?
Yeah, I mean, just one last person who's just gnawing at me, or just group in general, are the Green Bay running backs. And so you don't really see Green Bay here in this top 10 list when it comes to rushing ability, but they have by far the easiest rushing schedule, according to my SOS. And you're going to see very few stacked boxes because of Aaron Rodgers. And then you have that inherent question of like, okay, which of the three? Well, I think that Ty Montgomery could be a really good receiving option. And I do think Aaron Jones is the guy to own there. He's going really late in drafts because of that 2-game suspension. But if you take a look at just the productivity between Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones, I mean, there's no comparison. Jones had a 5.0 yards per carry average. He had the second highest rate of explosive plays in the NFL, only out of running backs, only second into Alvin Kamara. Just everything across the board. When he got on the field, he took that position. And it wasn't until him being out later that Jamal Williams had any kind of chance. But then at this flip side, which, by the way, Aaron Jones is a top 10% spark athlete. That means top 10% of all running backs. That's how good of an athlete he is. You flip that to Jamal Williams. It's a 3.6 yards per carry average. That's a bottom 10 spark score. And although he was taken before Jones in the draft, and McCarthy's been saying that he's been inactive, I just think that Jones' opportunity in front of him, his explosive ability, and his play in general is just going to overtake Jamal Williams. And if I'm wrong about Aaron Jones, it's only going to cost you a 9th, 10th, 11th round pick. And I think that given his opportunity and everything else around him, I mean, this is a can't miss prospect for me. I've been picking him up as a sleeper in everyone.
Can't miss. Wow. Well, I really love what you're talking about because you're going contrarian. You're going completely against the grain. The coaching staff says Jamal Williams is the man. You know, everything is pointing to Jamal, and you're saying Jones. And again, I love the fact that you, as you pointed out, you can get him late. He's missing 2 games. He's not the guy who's being talked about. And if you can get him late enough in your draft, again, the upside's high, and you're not paying a lot. So then, you know, those are the situations, in my opinion, you want to try and hit, is guys who can do well, even though it's a three-person running back field. And again, Ty Montgomery, again, he's starting to go a little higher now. He's a good guy because you know he's going to get some catches. He's obviously an X-wide receiver, and he's another guy. You know, I worry about Ty's upside because of the 3-person backfield. But that's going to be a good one. I like your analysis, and it's definitely contrarian, that's for sure.
Well, we try.
Well, this is a blast, and we could talk some more, but, you know, we're up to about 38, and this has been fantastic. Let me switch us back on the screen if I can do it without spending too much time. There we are. Gosh gollies, we're still here. If I get a little bit better at this video stuff, we could have had the chart on the side and still looked at our faces. I don't know if people really want to look at us that much, but thank you so much. I'll try and get this up later tonight. It takes a while to load it up, and hopefully the people over the weekend, a lot of drafters over the weekend, and like I said, I'm going to Vegas, and the high stakes guys, they draft Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday morning, believe it or not, even after the Thursday game. So a lot of people still drafting. I think they'll really enjoy your inputs, and I like looking at the offensive line and the strength of schedule. Certainly a great tiebreaker, and like you said, there's some sleepers out there that you can get late round sleepers that I think are really, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for these guys in every round, but in the late rounds, you're not just going down the ADP and saying, oh, you know. I even had a guy like Chris Godwin, who's kind of a guy I'm looking at like 12th, 13th round, and I was in a draft last night, and I was like, oh, he's not going to go. They were all using ESPN cheat sheets. He's way down there. I waited another round, and a guy took him, obviously paying attention to him. And the running backs in Indianapolis also are quite interesting. And Jordan Wilkins you can get fairly late, and I got taken. The guy got him 2 picks before my pick. Those are, again, guys you're looking at late that may actually spark. You have a feel for the Indianapolis backfield?
You know, it's funny that you bring them up because I thought I only had time for one more guy, but that combination of Mack and Wilkins, just because you're paying so little for them, then I just stack them. I often get both of them.
Fascinating you say that because I did that once in a best ball. It was a best ball. You're right. I mean, if I can get both those guys at a cheap value, there's a good chance, especially in best ball, but I mean, in any league, that's a thing that a lot of people haven't been stacking those two guys. And I think that's another value thing that Raptors can do to, maximize their team.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, great opportunity in front of those guys.
I'm still worried that Andrew Luck can't really throw a deep ball yet, but what do you think?
There are videos out there of him doing it. I mean, we have a couple of camp videos of just these beautiful dimes that he's throwing.
All right.
And I think that it's more about game script in the preseason right now, is that you see these 2-second passes. They're like, okay, this offensive line is gelling. We don't want to see him hit. So let's just, throw 2-second, 10-yard passes over and over again because they don't want to see him.
That makes sense because, again, you can be really fooled by preseason and or you can really be helped by preseason, and perhaps that's one of them that you can be fooled at. And I love Andrew Luck, and I wish him success, but you always worry because that team lied to us last year. They flat out said he was out practicing, and he wasn't throwing the ball at all. They completely lied to us. Anyway, thank you so much. This is a blast. Hopefully we can do some more videos through the season if we have time.
That'd be a lot of fun, yeah, and I'll try my best to be involved.
Wonderful. All right, we'll talk to you later. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Yes.